Hello.
Hi. Hey, my camera is still not coming.
Okay, it's not coming. Okay.
Let me retry it and
Yeah.
come back now.
Okay. I think we don't. Are you there? Theodore? Okay, he disconnected. Hey, Martin. Hello. Martin, can you hear me? Okay. If you're talking, I'm not. I can hear you. Looks like you have a microphone problem. Can you disconnect? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? All right, guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Hello.
All right, Martin. Theodore. Okay.
Yes. Sorry about the delay.
Yeah, we're already 5 minutes in the time, so we have a lot to talk about. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm just gonna jump right into it unless you have anything before we get started. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. And let's see here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so what we're going to be looking at today is to make sure that you have a knowledge on the Jira tool. Did you guys create an account already?
In Jira?
Yes.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so you need to go ahead and create an account in Jira. Okay, let me, so we don't have to spend time on that. So if you search for, I'm going to send you a link so you don't have to look for it. So here, let's see. You can see my screen, correct? Can you see my screen?
Yeah,
Yes.
you can see your screen.
All right, so what you're gonna be doing is the link, this is the link. Let me send you the second one. Actually, you have a typo in there. So you go to, I want to copy the link to the address. Wait. Yes. So you go here, you click on that link, and then it's gonna lead you to where it says a cloud working together. You select next, next, next. You don't need to pay anything or put your credit card, nothing. And then you can have a free account just for testing and playing around for yourself. Or what I can do, I can share the account of the Telearna Academy, this account with you guys if you want to play around with it, and then you can create yours later on. Which one do you guys want to do?
So do we sign up? Hold on 1 second. Do we sign up with Google or with email?
You sign up with anything that you want, Google, email, whatever. But don't do it now because we're gonna spend another few minutes. We're already late.
Okay.
What I can do, I'm probably gonna add you into this.
Okay.
And we're gonna do the process from here. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So this is where, when you land to this, I'm gonna give you a quick rundown where you're gonna be landing as you create an account, right? So
Okay.
once you create an account, it's gonna show you this specific interface. So you're gonna land into this. It's gonna show you, I'll give you the opportunity to creating a new project, right? And you could either create a Scrum project. In your case, it's more likely going to be a Scrum project or a Kanban project. And a Kanban project is one for which you do not have sprints. You do not have an actual backlog. You only have your to-do, your in progress, and your done statuses. That's it. It's really simpler. But most of the companies practicing Scrum, as you can tell, are going to be using the Scrum board. So if you want to have sprints, if you want to have product backlogs, if you want to have a Scrum board, if you want to have all the different items that we spoke about during the Scrum training, then you want to choose Scrum. Okay, so I'm going to choose Scrum. Once I get to this, right, there's a template already that is predefined for the Scrum processes, right, in Scrum project. So first you create a project. Second, you choose what template you want to use. Are you working with Kanban, which is another Jira Agile framework, as you know, or are you working with Scrum, which is the other Agile framework? In our case, we're going to be choosing the Scrum template, right? And it tells you from the get-go what are the issue types that exist, right, in the Scrum framework in Jira. Now we're gonna talk about that later on, but you can also add additional issue types. You can add spikes, you can add discovery, you can add anything that you want. It's customizable. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then you have the workflow. You could add any additional statuses and workflows that you want. Basically, this is what is going to show on your board. All the items that you're tracking that have a status assigned, and when you opening your board, you're going to see them into columns, right? Those are items related to the workflow, to do, in progress, and done. Okay. So once you click use template, now you're getting to the choose the type of project. So the simplest way of doing it is choosing the selected team managed project. Now, the difference between the selected team managed project and a company managed project is the team managed project, anyone, and you have it here, anyone on the team can set up and maintain a project. Anyone can add items into its user stories. Anyone can modify basically the statuses that exist, the workflows. Everyone can do. When I'm saying everyone is, the access is not restricted, right? And it is granted per project. However, if you're looking at opening something at the company level, right, those are typically maintained by the Jira admins of the company. So this is when companies want to standardize the way they use Scrum. For example, Jira. For example, they want all the projects within their companies to have the same exact structure. They want the same statuses. They want the same workflows. They want the same process, everything. Then you would choose company managed, okay? And in our case, most of the time, companies that do let the team manage the project and create a board are doing it this way. And they could have a standardization, but it's not restricted at the company level, okay? So you're gonna click on select the team manage project and provide a project name. So how do you guys wanna call this project that we're creating? Okay, let me call it, actually, do you guys have some suggestions? Okay, let's call it Scrum in Space. Let's call our project, our first project, Scrum in Space. Oh, I'm not typing the right thing. Okay, Scrum in Space. Okay, and once you do that, there's going to be a key that is generated on this key field, right? And you could modify it, right? You could change the key. This key is basically something that once you're creating your project, all your different stories that you're creating under that project are going to use that key as a prefix and then a number, just all the number. Okay, for example, if our key is sys, all our stories epic are going to be named SIS, so sys-001, sys-002, sys-003, etc. Okay, that's the key. So once you put the key in there and you confirm what you have, you just click on create a project. That's it. Now I'm going to generate a project environment for you, and it looks like this. Okay, so let me stop here and ask you any question on that quick flow, how to get to create a project and get to this specific screen.
No, what I really want to understand is that if you have a key that starts with sys, you have to change each time and add a new something like an extension to sys, right?
No, it's going to be generated automatically.
Oh, okay.
So if your key, as you create a product, the key is sys, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever you create as product backlog item or as item, it could be an epic, it could be a story, is going to inherit that key as a prefix and then a number that is generated based on the order. So for example, if you create a epic under this sys project, this Scrum in Space with the sys key project key, you're going to have the first item, and we're going to do it, the very first item called SIS-001. That's going to be the issue key.
Okay.
So the unique identifier to refer to that issue. And you could have a summary on that. You could have a description. You can have a bunch of other fields. We're going to see it. Okay. But it's just a prefix that all your items that you're creating within that project are going to inherit. And then they're going to be followed by a number. Okay. So this is what your first project is going to be looking like, right? I'm going to walk you through a little bit what you see here, right? And things that you need to care about, because what you're trying to do, you're trying to have all the understanding of what you need to do as a Scrum Master if you need to create a project and a board like this. Because you might, most of the time when you're getting into a project, actually, there are some companies admin, Jira admins, that already have this setup, but you just need to get access to it and then manage it. But in the rare case where you have to create it yourself, I just wanted to show you how you do it. It's very easy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, all right. So once you get to this page, things that you need to pay attention to is number one, you see your project name here. This is your full project name. It's called Scrum in Space.
Okay.
Now you have your planning stuff. We're going to talk about that in details, of which roadmap is not really used. So I'm going to remove that. I'm going to show you how to remove it. The main things that you're going to see in here are going to be one, your backlog, two, your board. And this is your Scrum board. This is where you're going to see all the status of the items that you're creating. You see to do, in progress, and done. And by default, those are the three columns that it come with, the three main statuses that all the boards are coming with. And we can tweak it. We can add more statuses, more columns to have a different workflow. For example, if a story needs to move from to do and get in progress, and then after in progress, the story maybe needs to go into testing, you could add a column there for the issues to be in a tested status. Okay, you could add a code review column. You could add anything that you want as a column for the workflow. Okay, all right, so this is the project name. Like I said, the roadmap, we're going to remove it. I'm just going to show you what it looks like, but it's not really important, right? It's like a timeline of items that you're planning to work, right? But it's really not used. So I'm going to deactivate that. You have your backlog, right? We haven't created anything here yet. And you could start creating items in here. You could click on create an epic, right? And I told you what an epic is, right? An epic is a big story, a high level story. And it's typically the parent of all the stories. For example, if you're building maybe a module in your project, you have multiple modules. You can create an epic, for example, for payment processing module, right? And under that module, you're gonna have child stories. So all those stories that you create under the payment processing module, maybe front-end development of payment processing module, back-end development of payment processing module. Those are going to be your stories, but they're going to be tied back to the epic, which is the parent, okay, in the hierarchy. Does that make sense? Okay. So you could create epics by clicking here, putting the name and all. We're going to come back to it. And this is your backlog. But in your backlog, one thing that you realize is you have SIS, or SIS Sprint 1. So also automatically, all your specific sprint that you're creating are going to inherit the prefix based on your project key. So that's why you see SIS here, Sprint 1. Since it's a brand new project, what is the first sprint? It's Sprint 1. So it's going to name it SIS, so your project key, and then sprint, and then the number, the first sprint number at this point is 1. So it's going to create SIS Sprint 1. Okay. And now this is your true backlog. This view is actually showing you everything that you have ongoing in your project, whether it is planned for a sprint or whether it is still in the true backlog. And the true backlog is this one. Okay. As we create more items, you're going to see we're going to be able to move them from the backlog to the sprint. And typically that happens when? If you guys remember what we said in the class. When do we move product backlog items from the product backlog to the sprint backlog?
Sprint planning.
And the sprint planning. Okay. So we're doing it during the sprint planning. All right. Again, I'm going to come back on that. So I just wanted to see what the backlog looks like. And then the board, this is where once you start a sprint, all the items that are on the current sprint are going to show here. Again, you're going to see that board has the SIS key as well. And this is something that you could change. I can decide I want to name my board something different. I could even say Scrum in Space board. But by default, once you're creating your project, your board is going to be named with a key and then board. So it's going to say key, so sys in this case, and then board, sys board. And you can change it. For example, I changed it. Okay. But this is where on your board, where your active sprint is going to appear. Your active sprint is the sprint that contains the sprint backlog items that you're working for the current sprint. And after you do the sprint planning, you start that sprint. As you start in that sprint, it's going to move items from the product backlog to the board, which is representing your sprint backlog. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Questions?
No, good.
Okay. Now, after this, let me go and flip back to the project setting, because we're going to add a couple of other items here and remove some. one thing that we're going to remove, like I said, is the roadmap. Okay, so once you want to set up your project or change settings of your project, you go all the way down to project settings. You click on it. Okay, now it's going to show you a bunch of options to configure your projects, whether it is by creating new statuses that you want to add, like testing, code review, whatever, whether it's creating new issue type. And in Jira, the name that they give to product backlog items in general are called issue types. So an issue type could be an epic, could be a story, could be a task, could be a bug, could be anything else that you want to create, even a spike. And speaking of spike, when we get down to it, they do not have by default the issue type spike, but you can create that when we're going to add it. Okay, so you come under your project settings page. The first thing that you're going to see here is a section for your board to configure your board. And that's your Scrum board, right? Those are the columns that you currently have. And I show you on the board the to do, in progress, and done. But you could add additional statuses. You could say testing, for example. Okay. Now, once you do that, it's going to be empty here. What you could do is move all those items into different columns. You have two things that you need to look at here. Those are columns. Those are statuses. And you could map a specific status to a column on your board. That might be confusing. Let me repeat it. On your Scrum board, you do have columns. Columns are visually representing different statuses that you want to represent in your workflow as you're working through your story. So you might move from a to-do column to an in-progress column, and from an in-progress column to a done column, or from done column to another column. Those that represents the different activity statuses that you're going to have as you're working through your stories. Okay. Now you have statuses, and those that you see in here are statuses. What I'm going to do, I'm going to delete this column. And the right way to actually statuses, and when you create statuses, you can also create at the same time columns, is going to manage workflow, right? And your workflow is this. This is where you create your different statuses, or add different statuses, or edit statuses, existing statuses. You click on edit workflow, okay? And you say, I want to add a in progress status. You could create that. Let me call that specific status testing, but it's going to be under in progress, okay? It doesn't exist yet, so I click create and I click add. Now this thing is going to pop here, and I can order it and have different roles so that one status is depending on the previous one. In other words, some companies are restricting stories from moving from one status to another one. They want you to go through a specific workflow. For example, some companies, they restrict you from moving a story from to do to done directly. No, if you want to move a story to done, it has to go through in progress, and then it has to go into testing, for example. Okay, and you could change those rules in here, allow issue in any status to move there, right? Now I'll have to follow this process, go through to do, in progress, and testing to get to done. When I check this, I could just move from to do to in progress. I'm going to show you what it means to move from to do to done, okay? But for now, I just added this new status, testing. I update the workflow, and I want to update that workflow for all the different issue types. And I told you an issue type in Jira is a bug, an epic, a story, a subtask, a task, and whatever else you want to create. You could create your own customized issue types in Jira, okay? So now I want to apply that new workflow to a certain amount of issue types. I could decide that I want to apply the same workflow to all issue types. I can decide that I want to customize it and have it per issue type. But in general, it's just simpler, and it makes more sense to apply it to all the different issue types, regardless of what they are, whether it's epic, story, bugs, subtasks, or tasks, okay? So in this case, I'm not going to remove anything, because I could remove something here. I could select that I only want to apply the new testing status to the bug, the epic, the story, and the subtask. That's it. But I can decide that I can restrict that new type maybe to stories, and I could only select stories. But in my case, I'm just going to add that status to all those issues types. So it's going to play the testing status is going to be applicable to all those issues type. So any story or any testing could be in testing status. That's what it means. Does that make sense? Okay. And I save.
Sorry.
Now, yes, go ahead. Now you see that there's a testing column that came in, and there's also testing status. Now, this status, I could decide that I move it here. And what that means really is if I was to have this structure, if I delete this column, for example, because I just created a status and I also created a column, but I could decide that I don't want a column, but I only want a status. In that case, I'll move that status that I created here, and I would delete this specific column. What that means is if I go back to my Scrum board, I'm not going to see the testing column, but I would have the ability of changing the status of a story or another issue type to testing potentially. That's one. Number two, if I move it from here to maybe in progress or done, that means that every time I have an issue type, like a story in testing, is going to show under the in progress column on my board. Every time I have an in progress status on the story, when I look at my board, it's going to be under the in progress column. That's what it means. And if I do the same thing and maybe I move it to done, every time I have a story in testing, when I look at my board, it's going to show under the done column. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right. So that's how you could create statuses. You could go to manage workflow, add a new status in progress. It's going to show on your board here. You could delete the whole column if you only want to keep the status, or you can keep the column and the status as it was before. And I'm going to revert to it. So let me discard this. I'm not going to save it. Okay. So if I discard it, you see now I have my testing status back, my testing column back. Okay. All right. Let me switch back to product setting again. We're going to come back on all this once we start creating items. I'm going to show you how exactly the end product is going to be as we're going through this. Because at the end, I want to be able maybe to create 5 stories to go through like the process, how you manage all the boards and things that the product owner is going to be doing, right? Till the whole cycle of completing a sprint, looking at burn down charts, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we want to do. Okay.
Yeah.
But those are the basic things that you want to be aware of. Once you get the access to it, you can play around with it. I'm going to give you, if you want to use it in a password from what we're doing today, you can log in later on and check it out, you know, modify things, clicking things and playing around with it. I'm going to give you the company credentials to log in. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So now coming back to the project, I open that here to the project status, right? I was working previously under the columns, and I have this testing column in here, and I have the testing status also in here. So it means that I have a valid additional testing status. But what I want to do though is I want to change the workflow. I want the workflow to look like, first, your story has to be in to-do. Once it's in to-do, it has to go into in progress. After it's completed from in progress, it has to move into testing before getting to done. So what I could do is to order it correctly in the right workflow, I could drag this here and drop it here. Okay. And you see now that if I look at my board, if I go back to my board here, you see now you have, I'm going to refresh it. Oh, I didn't save. I need to save first. So save. Now, when I save it, you see now that, let me refresh again. You see now that testing is coming before done. Okay, so that's how your board is going to look like. The second thing is, this is for the columns and statuses. Now you have the custom filters. This is something that you could use, for example, if you're trying to retrieve a bunch of items by using the query. You can use the Jira query and save it. It's called a filter. So it's basically, you can decide that, you know how you use a SQL? When you want to query like a database, you could query not a database, but some issue types in your backlog under your projects. For example, you might want to look at stories that are into do status. You could create a query for that and save it as a filter. We're going to come back to it. Okay. CAD cover image, that's not really important. I mean, that's just how it shows on the board. If you want to have it slow or small or big, that's not important. Okay. Let me stop here because we're talking about the board and go back to the backlog so we can actually create items like stories. Okay. So I'm coming back here and I go to backlog. You could do it two ways. If you want to create stories directly in a sprint, for example, if I want to add stories in the sprint, I could come here and create issues. It's going to show in the product backlog. And before it goes into the sprint, what happens? Sprint planning. In the sprint planning, we review all the different backlog items, and then we're going to move it to the sprint and then start the sprint. We're going to do it. So I can come and start creating stories in the backlog. This is the backlog section, you see? So if I could create, let's create a story. How do we want to call our first story? Let's call it complete. The story is complete ignition function. So our Mars Scrum in space, right? This is the story, right? I hit enter. Now you see that my backlog has created a story, and what do you see here? A key. That key that I was telling you about is derived from the project key, and then you have one, because this is my very first issue or item in Jira under my project. Therefore, it's going to inherit the key, SIS, and then the value, the number 1. If I created another one, right? Let's call it what? What do you want to call it? Let's call it get Hubble working again. Get Hubble working. Okay, I hit enter. Now you see that I have SIS2. If I keep doing that, every time I create one new issue type or item in my project, is going to be incremented by 1, whether it is a story or an epic or whatnot. That's for the story. So in the backlog, you're going to be creating and keeping stories, but you can also create epics. But the epics are going to be filtered not to appear directly in the backlog, because the backlog is going to hold, in Jira, is going to hold your stories, your bugs, your tasks, or your spikes. But they have a different treatment for epics, which are bigger story or umbrella stories, higher stories. They're called epics. They have a way of creating that, and you can do it here, right? I can create, let's say, an epic called, let's call it space exploration. That's my big epic. And now you have an epic, and you do have 2 stories, but they're not related. So I can decide that under my epic, I want to add those 2 stories. In other words, I want to make sure that the hierarchy of the epic, under my epic, I have 2 stories, or I can have multiple stories under the epic. I'm going to show you how to do it in a second. But you see that your epic did not show in the under the backlog. It showed into a different section, which is the epic section under your backlog option. But your true backlog, right, is right here. And this backlog that you see here, don't get confused, is your backlog view, where you can see not only your backlog, your true backlog, which is this, but also any sprints that you have, you're trying to plan for. Okay. Now, the other thing that you could do under the sprint that you have in here, I could add additional sprints. I could create sprint, and it's going to create another sprint. Now it's called sprint 2. I could keep doing that. I can create another sprint and sprint 3. I could add dates to those sprints. I can say, okay, when does that sprint start? Let's say our sprint is 2 weeks long, right? I choose 2 weeks. The start date, let's say, starts on Monday, the 11th, and then it's going to end, since it's 2 weeks, it's going to end automatically on the 25th, right? And you could have, you see here, the sprint goal. You remember about the sprint goal, right? Mm-hmm. Is what you're trying to accomplish as part of a sprint. And that's actually what we're going to call, the goal is going to be Mars landing. That's our goal. So everything that we're working on during the sprint 1 is going to be toward the Mars landing goal, sprint goal. Okay. So I update it. Now, what you're going to see here is my sprint one has a timeline, has a date. It starts on the 11th and it finishes on 25th, but it doesn't have any issue. Again, in Jira, you heard me talking about issue type multiple times. Remember this. What they call issue in Jira are actually part of backlog items in general terms. So an issue is not a problem. It's not normally, okay, I have an issue. I have a problem. No, it's not that. The concept in Jira of an issue is actually part of backlog item. That's the other word that they use for nominating or calling a part of backlog item in general, or an item, okay? So this sprint has 0 issues, right? Now, when I'm doing my planning, I know my sprint is gonna start on the 11th and all blah, blah, blah. In my backlog, let's try and add more stories. Let's maybe add 5 stories. The next one, let's call it design a new rocket. Okay. Let's add another one that is called maybe spaceship tracker. Tracker app update. Okay, that's another story. So you see, it keeps incrementing, but this is all in the backlog now. Once we're doing the sprint planning, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at all the different stories in order of priority, and also it has to have estimation points. You remember what we talked about when we talk about the story points, and we talked about the planning Parker and the process of estimating a story. We're going to get to it as well. Okay, but for now, once you're creating a story in the backlog this way, it's going to create only the name of the story. It's not going to put any content into it, and it's going to give it a issue key. Remember now, this SIS1 is the issue key. This is what you're going to be using when you filter and you're writing your Jira queries. You're going to be using the issue keys, okay? And you have to know the issue keys, and you can search for the issue keys, okay? Now, after you create this, like I said, it's going to be empty. I can click on that. If I click on that here, it's going to pop now the story. But your story has a bunch of things that are not populated yet. So it's empty, it's not assigned to anyone. There's no label. It's not assigned to any sprint. That's why you're seeing sprint says none. There's no story points, right? We're going to get to it. There's no description. This is where the description is going to go. Okay, so it's blank. So here you have the ability of creating stories without actually putting any content. And then you can add content later on and refine it as you're doing refinement. But you can have, if you click on anything, any of that is going to pop on the side, on the right-hand side, and you can see what it has. That's the first way of creating issues or stories or items. You could also create stories directly, and it allows you to do it even if in a regular Scrum process, you don't create stories directly in a sprint, right? But Jira gives you the ability of creating stories in the sprint specifically. So if I create a story here, it's going to show directly in sprint 1 because I'm doing it on the sprint 1. You see, on the sprint 2, I can create an issue. On the sprint 3, I can create an issue. On the backlog, I can create an issue. That's what I've been doing. Okay, but typically you don't create in the right of regular Scrum process. You create always epics or stories or issues from the backlog, and then you plan for it after it's estimated and refined. You plan for it when you do the sprint planning, and then we move it to the sprint. Okay, but just to show you that it has the ability to do it. That's, like I said, that's the first way of creating stories. And once you create stories from this view, it's going to be blank. The second way of creating issues, and by the way, let me back up a little bit. What we've created so far are stories, but create an issue could be for anything else. In this case, look at this logo. You see, when I hover over it, it says story. This is the icon of a story, because later on, when you look at the board, looking at recognizing the icon is going to allow you to understand whether it is a task, whether you're looking at a spike, whether you're looking at a story. So every single issue or item that you're creating in your backlog should have a type, an issue, what they call the issue type, which can be a story, epic, whatever. And it also has a logo or icon. But once I create this, by default, it shows me a story, but I can change it. I can decide that I want to create a bug, right? I could decide I want to create a bug. So for example, I could name the board, the bug igniter rocket igniter not working or failing. Okay, that's a bug. You see? Now you have what? If you hover it, it says what?
The symbol. Yeah, it says
It's not.
It's not popping.
It doesn't. It's not showing anything.
Yeah, it should be showing. It should be same bug. I don't know what's going on here. Let me refresh this quickly.
it's only show the symbol of the bug.
Yeah, but if you hover over it, for if you don't remember, it should show you. It should say bug.
Okay.
Right now, it's not.
Okay, anyways, but it's a bug. I don't know why it's doing that now. But you saw before when I hover over it, it says story. So if you don't remember the logo or the icon of a specific issue type, you could hover over it and it's going to tell you. So this little green thing, that's for story. This is for bugs. This is for epics. So this purple thing, square, that's for epic. So anything that you see that has this icon is an epic. Everything that you see that has this logo, this icon is the story. Everything that you see that has this icon is a bug. I could keep creating things. I could create a task, right? I could say clean the rocket. Okay, I could create a task. And everything that you create now, see that check mark? That's the icon for task. Okay, so every time you create anything, like I said, it's going to be empty and you're going to have to fill that out. You can fill that out from here or from opening that directly, right clicking on that and opening that in a different window. So it shows completely on the page. So if I open that task, now this is what it looks like. Okay, this is the same information that, let's see here, the same information that you were getting when you had this view on the side here, right? You have a section, description section is empty, right? You could add this, you could add description into this, or you could right click on the issue key because there's a hyperlink on it and say open in a new tab so that it explodes that into a separate tab and you can work solely on that without having all the other information on this view. So if I open it now, you see you have your description, you can add information into it. You have your labels, sprains, stories, assignees, reporters, the same information that you had here. Okay, does that make sense? Now, that's the first way, like I said, of creating issues. The second way, the first way of creating issues is actually clicking on create. So you could just directly come here and say, hey, I want to create an issue. And if you go through this, is going to ask you, what is the project that you're trying to create your issue under? And if you have multiple projects, you could change it. You could select which one you're trying to create, under which project you're trying to create it. But when you have this view already open under the project, so it's going to create it directly under the project that you have open. But if you come here, then you get to select whether or not you want to create it under the current project, and you select it here, or a different project. For example, if I change this, then I will create this epic or this story under the project terminal project. And if I create it, you won't see it under the Scrum in Space project because it's going to be created under the terminal project. So I will need to open a terminal project, which is separate, to see the issue that I'm about to create. Okay, so that's the other way of creating issues in Jira. So let me go back to it. Let's say I want to create, let me create an epic. Let me call it, I have space exploration. I have, let's call it Saturn shoot. Okay, and I can put in there a description. Okay, so I can put a description here. This is my Saturn shoot epic. Okay, obviously this is just a text that I put in there, but you would have a more elaborated description of your epic. What are we trying to accomplish? Things like that, right? But I'm just going to put it this way for now. You could have, you could assign the person who owns that specific story, right? Excuse me. That specific epic, right? I could assign him here, assign it to me. You could put labels, you could put dates, start date and stuff, right? That's really up to you. That's not really too important for now, but I click on create. As soon as I create that, you see now Saturn's shoot has appeared on the left side under my epics. Okay, so I could create epic stories, whatever from here, and I'll have to select under what project I want to create those issues. Or if I'm already under the project that I want to create issues under, I can just choose if it's an epic, create an epic. If it's a story, I could create that directly from the backlog or from anywhere else, sprint, whatever, even though we don't create, like I said, issues directly from the sprint. We're moving things from the backlog to the sprint after sprint planning. Okay. Now, this is one thing about this specific view that I wanted to make sure I clarify. Let me right click on one of those items, right? Let's say the first story. I want to make sure that I complete now information in that story. This is, okay, let's write it correctly. So as a astronaut, right? I want to I want to complete the ignition function if I can type right, so I can land to Mars. Okay, and then what you would do, this is the first part. You remember how I was showing you the different parts of a user story. This is now where you write it. I'm trying to find the presentation where we spoke about that in the class, so you can relate. Let's see here. Okay. Writing user stories. Remember this format, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you have as a logout user, I want to blah, blah, blah. So that's the same format that I write here. I could bold it like that. I can do any type of formatting that I want. Okay. And you see that it looks like this format. Now you do have acceptance criteria that you want to create. So I can also create acceptance criteria. So I can go ahead and mark a section here, acceptance criteria. I can type that in. All that I'm showing you now is what we do. So you will see it show in the story exactly this way. I can bold it, right? And I can underline that and go to the next thing and say bold when I given, start with given given the astronaut landing on Mars, yeah. So I want to put some space in there. So given the astronaut landing on Mars, when I what can we say? When I start the igniter. So when I start the igniter, then the engine is turned on. Okay. So on the basic level, this would be your story, and I save it. You see how it looks? So this would be a story, very simplified. And you could have multiple user stories, multiple acceptance criteria in your user story. So if you want to add more, you can just put some space, you know, and add additional acceptance criteria. You can keep doing that, you know, changing things here. Whatever is the acceptance criteria that you have for that specific story, you could add it. What you could also do, right, you could put that in a different format. And I'm just showing that you don't need to master it so that you know it's available. There is a, you can create a table, right? You can create a table where you put it like this: given, when, then. And what you would do, you put a number here. I mean, you put the acceptance criteria in this format. So in that case, I would put this: given the astronauts landing on Mars, right? When I start igniter or ignition, right? Then the engine is turned on. Okay, so this is another format that a lot of companies are using, and then they keep adding acceptance criteria in this form. So the next acceptance criteria, instead of putting it this way, you would just add it in here accordingly. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and then you save it. Right. So this is like I like this better, right? Creating those in tables is more organized, it's simpler, right? Than having sections with different acceptance criteria. And you could create a column to number those acceptance criteria, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, remember I told you about staying on the stories. Now you have your story. Let's say we are actually in the refinement meeting, because I told you before that once you create those items, they're empty. So the product owner could go ahead and create items in the backlog, like he knows we need to perform. What are the items that we have here? He needs to perform a complete ignition function, get hubble working, but he doesn't know, or she doesn't know exactly how we're gonna do it. Or they might know, he or she might know a little bit and add what they know. But then what is important is in a refinement meeting, the team is gonna get together and review this and add more stuff into it, right? Make sure that everyone is on the same page and understands what the story is about, what all the acceptance criteria mean, because they're going to be developing that. They're going to be testing all that. So after the refinement is done, I told you, remember about the estimating, and we use a planning Parker. That's where, right, estimating, it comes into picture. What comes into picture here? The Fibonacci series. That's where the story points that you hear about and we talk about are coming from. You sort of feel, I'm gonna go back to it in Jira, but the issue, the story number, story points are from the Fibonacci series. That's what Jira uses. Okay, we do the planning Parker, we decide. So after the refinement is done and everybody understand the story is complete. We agree, okay, we can go ahead and estimate. That's when we do the planning Parker and everybody's deciding, okay, is it a 5? How complex is it? Is it a 2? Is it a 3? Is it a 5? Is it an 8? And then we agree on a number. Let's say we agree on this being a 5. So that's where we're going to add 5 here. Okay. Then the next thing that is happening is that story that you see here, a story SIS1, right? Is still having now nobody assigned to it and doesn't have any sprint, but it has a story point. And now it's ready to be planned for when comes the sprint planning day. So we're going to pretend that we did the same exercise. We refine all those stories. Okay. We're just going to pretend that we did the exact same thing. I can open that here. Okay. Okay. And let me just pretend that I copy the same thing, even if it's not that, just to populate those those sections. Okay, so I put that here. Okay, I paste it. And then we do the same thing, we estimate it. Let's say we estimated, we agree that the estimate of this is 3. Okay, I keep doing it. I go to the next one. So this is basically the refinement process. I keep doing that. Okay, like I said, I'm just gonna be populating all those descriptions with the exact same thing so we have some content. And then we're gonna pretend that we're doing a refinement right now. So this is basically, ladies and gentlemen, our refinement session. Okay, and story point, let's say, is another 5. And I need to save this. Okay, go back here, go here. And add a description, paste it, save it, estimate it to be a 5 again. Okay, and then the last one. Well, that's a bug. We can also estimate that for that matter. That's fine. We did 5. Yeah, we did 5. We did. Okay, for this one, okay, let's just say this is a bug. And in this, since it is a bug, it's going to be populated a little bit differently. It's not a user story, so it's not going to have, except we could just say, describe, this is the description of the rocket ignition failing, okay? And then you could put a bunch of the other information relevant. You can attach, put attachments into this as well. Attach like screenshots of what's happening and all that. And then we're gonna estimate it to be, let's say 3. Okay.
So a question here.
Yeah.
Yeah, like during the estimate. So if we are using the Fibonacci series, and then it said whatever number that is selected, that's the number of story or issues that you are going to pick up.
No, that's the complexity. That number is an estimate of the complexity of that issue. That story, that bug, or whatever, how complex it is. Is it complex to up to a 3 or 5 points? Those are points, basically. And it's part of the Fibonacci series.
Okay.
Okay. And the Fibonacci series is going from what? 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. Those are the numbers that every time we estimate we're going to be using. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think we had a task in here as well that we're going to be, I think, okay, closed it. So let me just estimate that as well. Even though you don't have a lot of tasks in a backlog, typically you don't have tasks. Most of the time you have bugs and stories. And let's say we call in it, this is the clean the rocket task, okay? And I save it, estimated to be a 3, okay? So now we have our backlog that is refined. We have the estimates onto them. One thing though that we need to look at that is important. Let me close all this because I think we've done all of them. Right. So now all your backlog, when you're going back to, you see those numbers? Those are your story points. So you could see the story points for each of them.
Okay.
Okay, you could see the story point for each of them. Now, one thing that is important, and I want to go back to the project setting, issue types, right? You could configure your stories to have specific fields or your issues to have specific fields. For example, here it shows you all the existing story issue types, epics, bugs, and story, and you can configure what fields you want to use on an epic. You want to have a date, you want to assign a label, you want to have a priority, etc., etc. Okay. And one important thing that does not come by default in here, that's very important when you do backlog management, is a priority. And that field is right here. So I can decide that my epic, all my epics need to have a priority field. so I can choose and select what priority they are. Are they high or low or the medium, right? So you could drag this and add it as part of your existing field and save it. So that means if I open my existing epics on my backlog, right, I can right click on that. I want to open that. Okay, let me go here. Right click on that and open in a tab. So once I right click on that and I open in a new tab, just like anything else that we opened before, taskbar story, you see that now I have a priority that shows here. This field wasn't there before. If I delete, I can also remove that. Go back to the, if I remove this, I put that back here and I save, you will see that the priority field is going to disappear from here. Let me refresh it so you can see. So you can see that now I don't have the priority anymore. Okay, but in our case, and most of the time in Scrum, you need the priority because that's how you prioritize your backlog. The product owner, at least, is prioritizing the backlog. And when you do the sprint planning, you're looking at all the product backlog items in order of priority. You want to start looking at first the top items, the highest priority. That's what you commit to, and then down to whatever you could do in terms of your capacity. Does that make sense? Okay, so what we're gonna do then is not only we're gonna set the epics to have priorities because that's the only one that is missing. We're gonna add that here. We're also gonna have our bugs to get priorities. So all those items, issue types that we have here. Okay, I needed to save that first. Let me save it. Priority is there. Priority is okay. It's not there. I need to save it. I save. I added that to epic, to bug, and I save. Let's go to story. I also want all my story to be tagged with priorities so I can order them by order of priority. I want my tasks to have the same thing. Okay. And I save. So now all my different issue types are going to have a priority. I just added them. And now going back to the backlog, one thing that is important, right? All the items that I created here initially did not have the priorities. Now you see this column. This is medium priority. This icon is showing you for medium priority. As an example, let's open one of those ish stories, right? Now you're gonna see not only shows a priority field, but it shows 2 bars, and that's equivalent for medium. You could change that. So the priorities that you have, if you click on it, you're gonna see there's highest, high, low, and lowest, and all of them have an icon. So when, for example, if I save this and I go back to the product backlog, you're gonna see that this icon is gonna show on the issue type on the issue SIS1. Right now is lowest, and that icon is representing the lowest priority. So let's go back to the board. You see? So looking visually at your backlog, you could know that I see this icon. That means that this issue is a story. I see this number. That's the story point. That story is a 5-point story. I see this. I see, no, that's the lowest priorities icon. So this story is a story. This item is a story of 5-point that has the lowest priority, and the status is to do. Okay. Now, we did add, by default, it adds all the priorities to medium. But once you're working in Agile and Scrum, like I said, you want to do prioritization. And typically, as you're doing the refinement, you also assign the right priority in accordance to what the product owner is going to say. Or the product owner can assign it up front, and then you discuss it. But typically, the last word on that is coming from the product owner. So he's going to assign the priorities. Let me close this for now. Okay, so let me do that then. I'm going to assign all the priorities, and ordering the product backlog is, let's see here. Okay, so let's put this as a high. Let's put this as a, and see, I can use this screen directly for changing anything in the story without having to open that in the tab as I showed you before. So this is a high. Maybe this is a low. This is maybe a low. This one is the lowest. Okay. And this one is a, let's say, a medium. Backlog prioritization, which is part of product backlog management, which is done by the product owner. That means you need to make sure, the product owner needs to make sure that this is ordered by priority at all the time. For example, the backlog shouldn't be looking like this. How should it be looking? It should be in order of priority. So after this, which is the highest priority, which one is the next priority? High. And then it's the lowest. So this one, you can drag that and drop it at the bottom because that's the lowest priority, right? And then what's the next highest priority? That's medium. So I need to make sure that I move this one here. And then when I come to it, I see this is the lowest. So it has to be at the bottom. Now,
you cannot adjust by itself. You need to do it manually.
You need to do it manually.
Okay.
Right? So this now, ladies and gentlemen, is a product backlog prioritized. This is what we're talking about when we talk about power backlog prioritization. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So assuming we have our product backlog prioritization done, therefore, in the sprint planning, which is tomorrow, let's say our first day of the sprint is tomorrow, sprint planning, the product owner is going to say, okay, I already have a product backlog prioritized. So I know if you guys need to pick one story, you need to start by you picking up this one. If you have capacity to picking up 2 stories, you pick this one and that one. If you have capacity to pick 3 stories, you pick 1, 2, and 3 in this order, not 1 and then 6 and then no. It's in order of priority. Okay. So let's assume that maybe our dev team has 3 people. Okay. Let's say is 3 developers. And let's say we are going to be selecting those 2 items or 3 items, right? 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 5. What we're doing during the sprint planning, we talk about that. We can refine if those highest priority are not refined. We estimate it, but everything that is moving to a sprint obviously needs to be refined and estimated because that's how we're going to know how many story points we are intaking for the sprint. So what happens is once we commit and we know that our capacity is allowing you to use story, to do story, to commit to story 1, 2, and 5, we're going to drag it and move it into the next sprint. In our case, the next sprint is sprint 1, right? Drag it and move it to sprint 1. Okay. And the third one, drag it and move it to sprint 1. Okay. After we do that, now we need to make sure that we assign those stories. Again, that's coming back to not only the sprint planning we commit. If I show you the sprint planning activities. Okay, you see, topic 1, why is the sprint valuable? We added the sprint goal. You saw that, we added it. We had a product owner propose to increase its value. That's the prioritization. So we chose the items in terms of priority because the priority defines how we increase the value of business based on ROI. Second thing that we're doing is we what can be done. So that's based on the capacity. If the team is 3 and they can accomplish maybe 20 points for that sprint based on their capacity, we're going to choose, in this case, it's going to be what, 8 points. So we're going to be choosing up to 8 points worth of work because that's what can be done based on the team's capacity. Number 3, how would the chosen work get done? Now that's where it gets down to 2 things. We need to create subtasks under each stories. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So I open the first highest priority story. I want to create subtasks under the story. So what are we going to be doing in this story to make sure that we complete it? Okay, so one way of doing that okay, sorry, I might not. Okay, so the what was I saying? So the way to add subtasks to it is actually clicking add a child issue. And again, I told you in Jira, an issue can be a story, a task, a epic, but a child issue of a story is always a task. So remember that. So when I click that, this is allowing me to add a child issue. I'm gonna call it judo coding. That's a child issue. Okay. And that's a subtask. So this logo that you, there we go. This is what I was looking for. You see how I hover over it? It shows subtask. I don't know why in the other view it wasn't doing it anymore. It did it first. But you see how I hover over it? That's a subtask. That's different from a task. A subtask is a child issue of a story in Jira. Okay, so once you create a child issue of a story, it's automatically a subtask. So I can add that. I can add another subtask. Let's call it do the unit testing. Okay, I can add multiple other subtasks if I want, like do the code review. Okay, so all those subtasks are created under the story. So in other words, to complete the story, I have to complete all those subtasks, and those subtasks can be assigned. And when I click select that, you see, I can open it just like a separate issue in a different tab, and I can put a description of what I need really to do. Okay, this coding is going to be around this C++ function, whatever.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Just do me a favor. Can you give me a definition again of a child issue and then a subtask?
It's the same thing. A child issue in general is actually an issue in a hierarchy of issues that is below another issue. For example, a child issue of an epic could be a bug, could be a user story, could be a task. So on the top, you have an epic. A child issue of an epic could be a story, a task, or a bug. Now, under a story, a child issue could be only a subtask. Under a bug, a child issue could be also only a subtask. And on the task, you could also have subtasks on the tasks.
Okay.
So in the hierarchy, you would have epics at the same level, horizontally, you could have stories, bugs, and tasks. And then at the bottom, you could have subtasks. Right? Okay.
So the subtask is there the child issue.
No, there's no more child issue after the subtask. The subtask is the lowest.
The lowest, okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Subtask is a child issue.
Yeah, the subtask is the grandchild of an epic. That's what it means.
Okay.
And
Okay.
the subtask is a child of a story, is a child of the task, is a child of a bug. Okay. All right. So once I do that, I can add descriptions and I can assign it also to people. Now, one thing that I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna assign that to. I have another person that I created, so I can assign all that. That's part of our plan of delivering it. How would the chosen work get done? The developer plan the work necessary to create the increment. That's creating the subtask under the stories, and they decompose that into smaller work items, which is the same thing, and then they assign it. So we decompose this story into subtasks. What you see here, that you see here, right? You have 3 subtasks, and then we assigned, at least we're gonna assign it to different people. Okay, so that's what you're doing in the planning. So at the end of the planning, you should have all your stories properly documented, refined, estimated, have people assigned to it, have subtasks at the end of the sprint. That's why it's typically long, 4 hours maximum for 2 week sprints. Okay. All right, last thing, I'm gonna assign it to me again. Okay. So then you basically, for that specific item, you basically ready to start the sprint. Now, let's assume that we did the same exercise for all those different stories. We add a task, we assign, blah, blah, blah. This story can have also an assignee. Here, let me assign it to S. St. John. Okay. All right.
So, let me ask you another question.
Mm-hmm.
All this we're doing now, is that what the Scrum Master does before it starts, or the product owner?
Okay, so I told you before, you can get into a configuration where they already created a project, they already created a board and all that.
Yeah.
So what we're doing right now is the role of the product owner.
The product owner, okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, they could also involve the Scrum Master. Some companies are mixing roles, and if they're trying to have you helping maybe initially the product owner who doesn't know, maybe he never worked on Scrum. So you need to help him out to show him how to do it. That's why I'm showing that to you guys.
No, it's good. You're doing good. So I just wanted to understand it. Because I know that most of the things we've done so far are to what I thought were to be done by the product owner.
That's right. That's correct. You're right. Okay. So we assign all that. Now, following the process that I was explaining to you during the class, Once we have this done, now we're going to start the sprint. We did the planning. We committed to what we want to work on. We did the plan to implementing that, creating tasks and assigning people. Now we're going to start the sprint. One thing before I do it is if I go to the board, you're going to see that there's nothing showing on the board because I don't have any what we call active sprint, right? That's why nothing shows. The reason why I'm starting the sprint is now to make this sprint active. And once I do it, it's going to show all the issues that you have for that sprint on the board. And this board is showing active sprints. So if you start a sprint, you make it active, all the stories that are under the active sprints are going to show on your board. And we're going to do it now. Okay, so I start the sprint. Okay, we have the objective. It confirms that with you the start and end date. And then the sprint goal was mouse landing. Okay, I click start. As soon as I do that, it says sprint started. Good luck, team. I come here and I refresh this. You see, now your board is showing your items. Okay. And now it is going to be related to, you could move it into different statuses. As soon as you're working them out, you can move them back and forth into different statuses. Okay. Like, okay.
Can you go back to the previous screen, please? Before you click on where you have to click on start the sprint.
Oh, that's in the backlog. The backlog view right here.
Where is it that you click on start the sprint?
It was here, but there's already an active sprint. So sprint 1 is the one that we started. So it's active.
Okay.
In order to have that start a sprint button, we need to finish up the sprint first. So we need to click on complete.
Okay.
I'm gonna pretend we're going through the sprint. So we just started our sprint, right? And then, you know, people are working every day, daily stand up. We come to this board, we share this board. The Scrum Master is sharing this board, is going through, okay, let's go to, we filter by name, for example. You see this, S. Sanjon has this story only assigned to him. Hey, S. Sanjon, what did you do yesterday? What are you gonna do today? Do you have any blocker? That's the daily stand up every day. And as we're working this through, you're gonna see that there's some subtasks that we're also gonna be working on. Okay, and I can show that to you here. As we're working them, we're going to be closing those tasks. Once they're done, we move them to done. Once we finish them up, we move them to done. Well, as we finish them up, we move them to done. Okay, and then at the end, when all of them are completed, now the whole story can be marked as done. And once you do that, it's going to automatically flip into the done column. Okay, let me close this. You see? Now is under the done column.
So you will not find anything in the progress. All of them are moved to the done part now.
It was already, I moved it into progress before.
Yes, yes.
For example, you could, so let's say those are the items that you have still to work. They're currently to do. Nobody worked on it. This one you guys completed.
Okay.
And that's daily. Now, what you could do is, as soon as you remember, I was telling you about a burn down chart. As soon as you complete one item, what was your, we did that math the first time. Now is the right time to make sure you remember that you understand it. You remember when we did the sprint 1, we have story 8, well, and we didn't finish 1. What was the velocity? What was it? What we accomplished? So right now, at this moment, what was the story points that you committed to for the whole sprint? What was the total number of story points? You should be able to tell by looking at the numbers that are there.
The story point.
The total number of story points that you committed for the sprint 1, SIS1, sprint 1.
13.
How many?
13.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, at the moment, that means that on your burn down chart at the beginning, you have 13 points to accomplish. But after you close 3 point worth of stories, how many do you have left in your story points to complete?
10.
10.
Therefore, if I go back and I need to actually do some more features, I forgot to add additional features again. Let's do it before I show you the burn down chart. So going back to the configuration, let me pause for a second, okay? Going back to the board, the product configuration, I showed you we had issue types. I need to show you that you can add additional issue types. Let's just do it now. So I can decide that I want to have, besides story, epic, bug, task, I want to have a new, and subtask, I want to have a new issue type. Let's call it a spike. I can create a custom issue type, okay? I call the spike. The icon, I can change it. I can put whatever I want, right? I can pick whatever I want here. I can, this is already for box, and that's the sign. This one I can choose, this one I can choose. That's available. And those are all the different icons that you can use. So if you create your custom issue type in your board, in your project, you could choose the icon that goes with it. And you remember the icon that we had for bugs, right? The icon that we have for stores. This is what is going to represent the new epic, the new issue type that you're creating. So let's go ahead and use this for a new issue type. Create a issue type and then create. Now you're going to see that it's going to appear now here under the list of your existing issue type, right? And you could also add the priority that we added to all the different issue type that we already had and save it. Therefore, going forward, instead of having only epics, bugs, story, and tasks, you also now have a new custom issue type that is called spikes. And you can use it as you want. If you don't need it, I mean, you don't need to create custom, right? You could do whatever you want, but mainly you can stay with bugs, story, tasks, epics, and stuff. That's it. That's enough. Okay. Now, let me go back to the project setting and look at one thing that I should have maybe done before for you to understand what I was looking at. I said I was going to remove the roadmap, so this one is not needed. So I can go under features and I turn this off. If I turn this off, you're going to see that the roadmap is going to disappear here because I don't use that feature. You see, it disappeared. Okay, I can decide that, wait a minute, I have a backlog that's showing, that's why it's showing. I have a board, right? This one you cannot remove it. It's by default always on. But I have one thing that is missing in the report. That's where I'm going with the burnout chart. The burnout chart is generated on the report. So you need to activate that report feature in order to be able to generate velocity charts, burn down chart, and we're going to get to it in a second. That's why I'm activating this, right? Issue navigator, that's like, you can see the list of issues. That's not too important, but let's put that on. Estimation and all those different things. You can activate that. Deployment, releases, you can also activate code. You don't need that, right? And let's just stop here for now, but you need to customize it to whatever you need. And you do not need to add every single thing, only what you're using. And the main things that you want to add always are the backlog, the board, and the reports. And the sprint, obviously, right? Sprints, that's a no-brainer. It's by default activated anyways. Okay. And the releases, that's also sometimes important, but I would say secondarily important compared to the other ones that I mentioned. Now, let me go back to on my board. You're going to see that it's going to appear. Everything I activated is going to show now when I'm refreshing it under this left section as a feature, new feature. Okay, so now I have a reports feature that showed, and I have an issue navigator. That's an issue navigator feature where you can search for issues, right? You can write queries. That's what I was telling you about. I can, this is all the issues that I have, but I can filter it and write a query and say, for example, just to extend myself a little more before I forget, this is a query that I'm writing maybe to filter on items that are maybe in sprint 1. It should show me 3 items only, right? So, and issue in well, actually is in status, an issue in, let's say what to do. Order by okay, I guess I need to put uppercase. Oh no, that's not issue key. That's the status. It should be status. I don't know if I put that before. Status. All right. So you see, so I just created a filter or a query. That's what you call a GQL. That is going to show all the different items that I have in my project sys, right? And the status is in to do. So you see the status of all those items are to do. So this is a query, and I can filter based on everything that is assigned to Stefan, for example. So and status in to do, and assignee is assignee in or equals order typo. Okay, so you see now it shows all the items that are in to do. You see the status of all those items to do, and all the assignees are me, Stefan. Okay, so you could do this and save this filter. That's the filter thing that you were showing before. I can save this and call it maybe my filter, so that whenever I want to have all the issues that are in to do and assigned to Stefan or Stefan to do, I can call that Stefan to do filter. And I can make it private. I can make it available to all the project people who have access to the project to view, to use. I can have people editing that at the product level, etc., etc. But that's not really, you can figure that out by yourself, but I just show you that it exists. And this would be a link that you could potentially share. Okay. With people, right? You can send that to them in an email, and this is the filter key. Every time I have this, you can copy this link and give that to people. Every time they're going to be using this link and tap that on their bar, if they're logged into Jira, it's going to show you this result. It's going to filter that this way. Or you can save this and bookmark this on your own. And every time you want to see all the items that are assigned to Stefan and that are in to do, you just click that bookmark, you open it, and it's going to show, do the filtering for you. Okay. So I went a little bit forward because I don't want to miss to tell you that and show you that you know it exists. You can practice it on your own. It's easy, right? You can look at videos and stuff. It's very easy. But anyways, coming back then to the issues navigator. So I added that, and it shows this option, that feature that shows issues. That's where you're filtering things and you're writing queries, or GQL, Jira queries. What did I do here? I closed it. Okay. And then you have the releases. For the releases, this is a topic that is not critical, right? But for you to know, you could just decide to plan all your specific stories to be released, to be mapped to a certain release. So for example, if you have the release every 3 months, you could plan, when you're doing a sprint planning, you can decide that, okay, this item that we're working on is going to go as part of this release. And there's a field, there could be a field on your story that precisely mention the specific release where that story is going to be released at or delivered at. But that's really besides a lot of things that I wanted to show today, but know that it exists. I don't want to go into details into it. It's not that important. Okay, now that we have report, this is the key reason why I went to it. You now have the option of looking at your burn down chart. Okay, that's for your specific sprint. This is where you look at it. In the key SCI, you can see that those 2 items are in to do, and this one is completed, it's done. So this report, sprint burn down chart, is going to show you specifically the remaining work that you have. Okay. Currently, you see we have -3 points. So what is your remaining amount of story points for the sprint? We had 13, we removed 3, right? So now we are 10. Now, normally I should have done that on the next day. If you do it maybe on the next day, it's going to show the next day at the date that is pointing to the next day. But since I did it today, that's why we're still day 0. That's why it's dropping from 13 -3 to 10. So it went down. So if you wait maybe 1 day, you would see that it actually went through 1 day timeline, and then it shows 10 after 1 day. If after 2 days you drop 3 points, it's going to show you, and it's going to build that burn down chart. As you've seen here, this is the baseline, but it's going to be going down every day or every time that you close an item. Now you see that we have 10 story points remaining. If I go back to our board, right, and I close an additional story, let me close all this. Let's go back to the board. I close only 3 points. So let's say the same day, I'm lucky, I have a lot of energy, and I'm moving progress. Somebody's working into it, and then everybody who needs to test it, and then we're done with it. So in one day we completed 5 points plus 3 points. That's 8 points. We had 13. We completed 8. Now we have 5 remaining. So what is your outstanding story points remaining? 5. So if I go back to generating the board, now you are at 10. It's going to drop another 3. Right? You're gonna have how many did we drop?
It's gonna drop 5.
We drop 5. So we drop 3 and then 5. So now you're gonna have 5 left. You have 8 that you burned. So initially you had 13. It's gonna go all the way down now. We had 3, and then it's going to go, and you're gonna see that line, another line here. But again, it's showing onto this line because we are on the same day. Normally it should be showing as you're working through your sprints, but you should be able to review that every day as you're going through your daily stand-up, right? To give your teams an idea of the progress of the work, because that's the goal of the daily stand-up, is to self-inspect the progress toward the sprint goal. Okay, makes sense?
Yeah.
All right. So that's the reason why I wanted to show that to you. Now, we're lucky, we finished everything up. Let's pretend we're on the last day of the sprint, and we ended up finishing all our work. Everything is done, we're all good. Sprint review comes in, product owners, stakeholders getting to the same meeting. We now have to demo all those items, right? As you guys know, go through the spaceship tracker app, update, show what the acceptance criteria is saying, going through the application and showing exactly what we design and what we develop as per the user story, and then is getting approved or rejected, etc., etc. If anything is getting rejected, we're going to move this into the backlog, and we're going to move that back into to do and in the backlog, right? So if, for example, we decide that, or the product owner decides that this story was not actually completed as per the expectation, so it's not really done, we're going to flip that back into to do or in progress, actually in progress, and we're going to move it to the product backlog. The best way of doing it really is, right? I open that, I change it, put it in progress. Okay, so it's going to flip back into the progress column here, right? And then I look at the backlog view under the active sprints, which is the sprint 1. Now this is in to do, and I move it back to the backlog. Okay, that's what I would do, but I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to assume this time just to show you what could happen in case some results are rejected. That's what we mentioned when we talked about the product owner can reject the result in the sprint review. And that's what's going to happen for you to relate to Jira, how we do the process. So let's assume that we completed everything exceptionally. We're happy, we demo it, they're happy, and everything is done. Now is the last day of the sprint. What we need to do, we need to close the sprint. I told you before, Martin, before being able to start a sprint, which means making a sprint active, you need to close the active sprint. So you cannot have 2 active sprints at the same time, right? You cannot be working on 2 different teams at the sprints at the same time. So therefore, before opening a new sprint or making a new sprint active, you need to complete the previous one. We need to close the previous one. That's what we're going to do here by clicking complete. We sure we completed everything in the sprint, all the backlog items, the sprint backlog items, we click complete. Okay. Once we do that, all the different items that we completed are going to disappear. It's not going to be visible under your backlog view anymore, right? Because the process that Jira has in place is actually to simplify and avoid confusing people as their teams or as they're completing items, because it's already done. It's not relevant anymore. So you don't need to see it anymore. But if you, in case you need to see it, you could just go back to looking that up by the filter. I don't know if I still have this here, right? If I can filter it, or by the issue name. Okay, it's not need to do anymore, so that's why it disappeared. But you could potentially just open one issue key, and you remember that, for example, you had the issue 5. On your bar, you're going to be changing and putting the issue key. So by the issue key, you could still retrieve your issues. And here, this is the issue 5, one of the issues that were in our previous sprint that got done. You see the status is done. It's not getting removed from Jira. It's just getting hidden from the backlog view to simplify what you're seeing at the time, because everything that is done is not relevant to view anymore in the backlog. It's already done. But if you want to come back maybe and say, okay, I want to see how we did the story, what we had in there, and reuse it maybe for another story, you need a key, you need an issue key, and you could type that, add it to your bar, and open it through the URL. Or if you have a filter, just the way we created our filter, you could do it as well. In this case, it's done. So I can change this filter actually to make it done. And you see that all my items that I had in here, SIS5, SIS1, etc. are showing here. Okay. All right. So we're done now with the previous sprint. Now we want to work on the sprint 2. Doing again the sprint planning the next day, the first day of the sprint. We're going to be working on this. We're going to be working on that. We're going to be working on this. Okay. Same
question here.
Yes.
Yeah. On the product backlog, the items that you have in the product backlog, if you are starting, let's say that you have this one, let's say 6 items.
Mm-hmm.
This item in the, or 6 issues in the product backlog, and then you work 3.
Yes.
You work 3. So if you are starting, let's say that you work only, can you work only one on one sprint? Because the first one you said that you have 3 developers.
Yes. The way you look at it is it is based on your capacity. For example, and what is the capacity is how much you should be potentially able to accomplish. And the capacity is estimated in story points as well, because your story points that you're having on the stories, we're doing it for a reason, because it needs to match to your capacity. For example, if your capacity is 2 glasses of water, right? 2 glasses of water, and you have a story that is 3 glasses of water. If your measure is not point, but glass of water, then you're going to be able to take stories up to 2 glasses of water, because that's your capacity. So in the Scrum, in Jira specifically, we use the story points. Now, what we define typically from companies is every developers, we assume that the assumption that we define that every developer has approximately 8 story points that he can accomplish during a sprint. That's typically the standards. Companies are using 10, some are using 8, some are using 6. It depends, but the sweet spot is 8. That means that everything that we did before, there are 2 stories that one developer could do by himself, right? And if we assume that the capacity, we had 3 developers, so they could take up to 24 story points, that's it. So we could have taken 13, and then what? We have what, a 13, 16, 21, and 24. So we actually could do everything, assuming this is the assumption that every developer can accomplish 8 points a sprint. That means that the capacity of the whole sprint, assuming that there's nobody who's going to be taking vacation, there's not going to be any time off, assuming they're going to be fully available, it's going to be a capacity for that sprint of 24. Now we look at the backlog and we look at the priorities. First, highest priority is 5 points. Second one is 10. We take all those till we get to 24 points worth of stories. That's what we move into the sprint. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now we completed the sprint. We're planning for the second one. One thing that we can do, since we're doing the planning, the velocity. Let's look at what we're referring to as a velocity. Going back to the board, velocity report. Okay, we completed only 1 sprint so far. This is your velocity report. And what you're going to notice is on the bar, and I showed that to you in the training. Let me see if I can find the slide. When we spoke about capacity, velocity, burnout chart. Okay, so you can relate to this line that you had, the gray line that you had in Jira. That's your baseline, which is blue here, expected. And then the other one should have been something like this. But since we just doing everything the same day, that's why you couldn't see that dropping correctly. This is the velocity chart, right? And this is what it's equivalent to. Normally, we only gonna have all this as working through sprints. In other words, in this case, the team has already worked 7 sprints. In our case, since we only had one sprint that we worked, right, we're only going to have that historical value. It's going to be one sprint. Those two bars are going to represent, the gray one is going to represent what we committed to. We committed to 13 points, and the green one is going to represent what we accomplished, what we completed, right? And you could have a disparity in the case where I told you during the sprint planning, maybe the product owner is rejecting some of the stories. Let's say we committed to 13, but then when we do the review, only 5 and 3 stories points are accepted. So we have another 5 that is rejected. This bar is going to shift to 8. So it's going to say, in other words, this gray bar is going to be raised up to 13, and this one is going to show only 8. Okay?
Yes.
All right, so let's pretend that we're doing the same exercise again. I'm going to show you that after the second sprint, we can come back to this, and you're going to see the second sprint velocity as well on this report. So let's go back to our Jira, our backlog, and let's start the sprint. Let's say the sprint planning is completed. We created a task, we assigned it, everything is done. It's time to start the sprint. We start the sprint. Okay. The sprint goal is what could be the sprint goal? Let's say earned return. I'm just gonna randomly put something here. Okay. It could be a longer term, could be a sentence. I'm just making sure that you know that there's a sprint goal around which all our product backlog items, our story sprint backlog items are going to be around, basically. Now, this is your new story, same exercise. People are going to be working as they're moving through it. They're going to be moving that through different statuses till they complete it. Same thing, people are working daily, we're checking, we're looking at the board, we see the movement, people are moving that across. And then at some point, right, all of them are going to be done. Let's say we're on the last day of the sprint. Same process. Now sprint review, demo, go ahead and share all those user stories and what we actually did as on the software or whatever product increment we're working on. When we're done with this, assuming everything is accepted, well, let's do an exception now. Instead of having all of them completed this time, the sprint is already, let's see here, the sprint is already started, right? So in other words, as you're starting the sprint, Jira is going to capture a picture of how many stories you had committed to once you click on that start button. That's what is going to be your gray bar. Remember this bar? This is going to be your gray bar. That's going to stay. Now it's going to be waiting for you to complete the sprint and see, once you click to complete the sprint, how many stories in that sprint are in done. And going to calculate the stories number and then put the gray line for you. So let's assume that here, where is it? Let's see. Okay, so I have everything now that is done. Let's assume that actually one is not done. It was rejected because the product owner did not like it in the sprint review. So that one is in progress again, and then we move it to the product backlog. Okay. Now we confirm it. Now we complete the sprint with whatever was accepted. Okay. Come back here and we're opening the velocity report. You see? Now we committed to what? To 11, but we completed 8. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So now you know almost everything about Jira. In general, that's the full process, from planning, from doing the refinement, from using the field stories, priorities, etc., etc. I'm going to shift back maybe in the next 5 minutes to the project settings, right, to show you additional stuff. And then I'm going to let you ask me any question, and I'm going to add you actually to this board so you can see it, and then trying to play around before we disconnect and see if you have any questions. We're going to, maybe kind of practice. I want you to touch it yourself, okay, before we leave. So let me first finish up with the project settings. Yeah, come back here. So I spoke about the issue types, like you can add spikes, you can add any issue type, so that's fine, you know it. I spoke about the columns, the features, I'm sorry. So the features, what you can activate here, what you can deactivate, and all those things. Now, looking at something important is the access. right? In this case, that's where I want to end really is I'm going to make sure that as we're creating a project, let's say I have a new team. They're not under that project yet, right? They're not as a user that I can assign items to. You saw that there are two people that I could assign items to. For example, let's say Theodoros and Martin, you guys are just new people from the team. I want to add you. As an admin, if I'm the Scrum Master doing it, it depends. Some companies have the Jira admins that we need to reach out to add people. Some people have the Scrum Master being the admin who creates the board and set up all those things for the team. And in that case, what you would do if you are the person doing it, you would add people to your team. You see that add people? Mm-hmm. So let me give me your email address that I can add here.
M-A-R-T
M-A-R-T
S-I-E
S-I-E G-E-R
at Gmail.
So you should be able to receive an email, an invitation. And once you do invite someone, this is a free trial version. So you're not able to lock the option of assigning different roles. But normally under the access, this allows you to have people being set up as admin, some set up as just team members, some set up as developers, and all those different roles have some restrictions, what we call RBT, so a restricted access based functionality. So once you have admin access, it means that you can modify all the boards, you can modify fields, you can modify the project in general. But typically you don't provide that access to all your team members. You're gonna provide them regular developer access where they can only view things, okay? And you could create also, when the Jira is implemented at the enterprise level, they could even create special roles and provide special functionalities to special roles, right? They can hide ability for you even to see certain fields, right? They can hide that from you, or changing certain values, they can hide it from you. But that's where they would do it. In our case, it's just a free version, so we won't have the ability to doing it. It's just gonna be by default admin to everyone. Okay, so that's why. So let me add you to Dara. What's your email?
Yeah, Dara. That is D-A-A-R-A. T-H-A-D-E. A-D-E.
D-E.
A-U-S.
A-U-S.
At gmail.com.
Okay, so is it, okay, at gmail.com, like that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and you're gonna be on admin. Okay, so I added you. You should receive an email that asks you to click on the link, and then you'll get you set up in here, and then you should be able to see yourself on the board.
Okay, I got the email.
Okay, so take a few minutes to actually do it.
I joined the team.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, just write anything that you want there. That's not really important.
Excuse me?
I'm saying it's not really important. Just type anything that you want there quickly, briefly.
Okay.
Did you receive it, Theodoros?
No, yes.
Okay, double check this email address. Is it the right one, right?
Yeah, that's the right one. D-A-R-A-T-H-A-D-E-A-U-S.
And I'm seeing him here as administrator as well.
Yeah, so you should have, you should see it now. Good.
But his name is appearing on my board without his email.
Okay. You didn't activate it yet because I see here it shows invited. So let's see. So let's go back to the board and see if we can assign anything to you. Well, I guess we close everything, but let's open this one. Let me look you up. And let me maybe trying to assign something to you. So Dara. There we go. So you're showing here. So you're there. That's good. All right. And let me flip this back so I don't have to, let me put that back into the, so I don't have to create new issues there for no reason. Okay, so I'm gonna close this. You got exactly what's the meaning of the velocity chart, how we pull that, right? And how it's constructed. So let me close that. And I wanted to assign this to you, Martin. Okay, so you're showing here as well. All right, and that's the epic. Let's see what else we have here. Okay. Okay, so right here, then I go back to the backlog, I reopen a few items, so and assign that to you guys. Here we have the rocket ignitor failing. So let me assign this one to you also so you can see your name, Martin. Okay, right. So now you're both showing on this board. And if I was to start a new sprint, basically I would do the planning, move that here, and then make sure that you have access to the board. Can you see the board?
Yeah, I can see the board.
Yeah, so if you click on board, then now move things around. So I'm going to start a sprint so that it becomes active. Okay, let me call it our new goal. Okay, that's the sprint goal. And now you guys, you should be able to move those things back and forth. So go ahead and do it. I can filter by your name, right? All of the things assigned to you are going to show. I can filter by Martin's name. If I click here, it shows all the things assigned to him. If I filter on my name, since I don't have anything assigned to me, nothing's going to show. Okay. So you guys go ahead and move things around. Maybe move things to testing, each of your stuff. So you are developers right now. So you're working on each of those items. Move it to, let's pretend that you move from in progress to testing because you're done with the development. Did you do it?
Yeah, I'm trying, I'm pushing.
Mine is not taken at all. Come move.
No, mine has taken in progress 2 issues.
Okay.
And then the to-do, where do I move the to-do to? To in progress?
No, did you see the board, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen the board.
So I'm saying on the Martin, so on the first SIS6, move that bug into testing.
Yeah, mine can move.
Yeah, I have 2 items in the testing.
Okay.
Oh, you mean I'm not seeing the spaceship that you have.
How is it that you can see it? Scrum in space, you can see this project?
Let me see. When I go to board now,
Yes.
I see an assigned status to do.
What are you doing at? Okay, open this link. Let me give you the link in the chat. Okay.
Yeah.
You should be able to get to this board that way. Click the link.
Oh, I should click on this new link.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Okay, it's good now.
Okay. So did you move it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What did you move, and from where to where?
I moved the rocket igniter failing from in progress to testing.
Yes.
Then spaceship tracker app update from
Right.
in progress to testing.
Yeah.
And
So
this is in C Sprint 3.
right. Does that make sense, Theodore?
Yes.
You saw the same thing, right?
Yes. Oh, that is okay.
Yeah, because right now all of them are in testing.
Okay, move them, Theodore, into done.
All of us.
No, don't you, Martin, anymore. So just let Theodora do the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, they are all on done now.
Okay, assign. Now, one thing that you do, Theodorus, for the story that is assigned to you and that is in done, reassign that to my names, to Stefan. And same thing for you, Martin, the story that you have assigned to you and that is in done, reassign that to me, to Stefan.
You say I should reassign it to you. In to do.
No, just change. That means just change your sign from your name to my name. To Stefan.
Okay.
That's what we call when we mean reassign.
Yes. When you reassign, you don't click somewhere to validate.
No, you just change. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do it. Look, you just click on the story. You can either open that in a new tab or you can open that here directly and you change your signing.
Okay.
Here. Click on this and you change to Stefan. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and do it now.
That's what I did.
Okay, you
Let me
just see shift, you switch to Stefan. That's good. Theodorus?
Okay, I'm coming. I'm still on it. Hey, I'm not getting it.
Okay, what did
Let me
you
see.
do? Just click on the item, right? If you click on it, you see my screen? You look at what is the assignee field right here, right? So you click in there, you delete it, and then you start typing the name of whoever you want to assign it to. It's going to filter and then show you the name.
Okay.
That's it. Okay, try it. Did you risk? Okay, yeah.
Okay. So now, if when I reassign it, how do I get the screen that you are having now? The screen.
You should be on that screen, right?
I'm still on the screen where I did the assignment. Oh, I should go back to board. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Go
Yeah,
back to board. Okay.
exactly. You see it? You went back to board?
Yeah, I'm on the board now.
You see it now, right?
Yes.
Theodorus, you done?
Oh yeah. Hey.
You having a hard time?
I'm good.
Theodorus, okay, so let's do that one more time.
Yeah, let me see it one more time.
So you just click on the item, right? You see the screen when you click on it, on the item?
But I just got a message that Theodore made 2 updates.
What did he change though? Did he change the assignee? Because I still see that under his name.
An email came to me that,
I-
that he did 2 updates.
What updates did he do? Because it should tell you in the email.
Yeah, I was trying to assign it. When I click on it, go to unassign.
Okay, so now move it from unassigned to my name. And actually still, are you on the right board though? Are you seeing this screen that I'm on right now?
Yeah, I'm seeing it right now.
Okay, click on you see how hover over it, the thing that is assigned to you? Click on
Yeah.
that, click on the story. It opens this little window.
Yeah, I click on it.
And then look at on the right, there is assigning this field. And
Yeah,
then
assigning. Okay.
just click your name, you delete it, and then you type Stefan, and it's going to start filtering, and you select Stefan.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to cancel it for myself. And then you save it, that's all. I mean, it's going to auto save, and then you close that window.
That page, when I click on it, it doesn't respond.
What?
Yeah, the page on the listen, on the item, when I click on it, it doesn't.
If you click on it, it doesn't show anything?
Yeah, it doesn't show anything there.
Okay, let me do it a different way. Let me ping you, open this link. Okay, so only you, Theodore. Actually, let me just bring it to you. Click this link. Tell me what you see.
Okay.
What do you see?
I see this in the assignee, and then I click on it and select Stephen.
Okay, so you did it.
He did.
Let me go back to the board to see. There we go. Good job. So
Okay.
you did it. So
Okay.
make sure that you register, because the link. Did you receive the email invite that I sent you?
To register?
Yeah.
I think that's what we use to access this.
Yeah, no, I'm talking to you, Theodoros.
Okay.
Did you
Yeah,
do
I didn't receive the email, but I just check on that. I click on the link that you saw me, and then it went through.
So you should actually, to be able to fully get into that product, you should check your spams, because it should trigger an email to your email address, right? And then you should be registering or something.
Okay.
But anyways, that's all. You guys can navigate through everything that we did, play around. You know, if you guys want me to give you the, I can give you the credential of, this is a credential just for you guys to log into this afterwards.
Okay.
So save those links that I'm going to send you, right? The credentials that I'm going to send you right now.
Okay.
And save the links also, so that you can log in as me and you can do admin stuff and all the things. However, you should be able already yourself to do it, because I set you up as admin. So you should be able to do everything that I do.
Okay.
So if you register through the email that you received, Theodoros, you should be able to do it. Martin, I think you're all set.
Okay.